Ohara lives. This is huge. One Piece has given us all of the lore combined with all of the feelings, and to top it off, a head whose top is nigh on impossible to determine. This is one of those times where One Piece just had me in stunned silence. There is so much packed in here. Too much, potentially too much. I feel like I have Vegapunk's head, which looks like it could explode at any moment. And I dare say that this is the big revelation of the chapter. After encountering the 6 other Vegapunks, turns out it's lucky number 7 that finally shows us the man we've been waiting to see ever since he was first alluded to on Alabasta. So I've been reading this series weekly since 2005. Yes, I am old. And for most of the time between now and then, there has been a lot of weird Vegapunk fan art. And I can't help but feel like everyone was simultaneously bang on about his design and yet completely incorrect. And to make matters even more interesting, we are introduced to 2 different true Vegapunk designs. Both take clear inspiration from Einstein. In fact, when this chapter came out, Einstein was even trending on Twitter as a result. Although the apple on the head is either a biblical reference or a nod to Isaac Newton. Because along with Steve Jobs, Isaac Newton is the guy most closely associated with apples. And now, if I recall science correctly, Isaac Newton is the guy who went, "Hey guys, I think that there might be a gravity," whereas Einstein is the one who said, "Bang on, mate, and furthermore, here's how it works." I do think that Vegapunk's design is probably going to be very polarizing at first, because even for One Piece, it's a bit out there and maybe a wacky overload. I personally love it. In fact, I like his younger version even more because that head is amazing. I love that Oda is willing to step into aesthetic territory that could possibly tank the careers of most mangaka. That head is just so damn big. In fact, you know what? Let's do some science. I'm intrigued to know exactly how long it takes a camera to pan from Vegapunk's face to the top of his head. And oh my crap, it's a surprisingly long time. So long that I'm running out of things to say to fill the time. And finally, there it is. The weird thing is that as crazy as Vegapunk is, Oda still has this magic storytelling ability to make me take Vegapunk 100% seriously. Because remember that in the context of this chapter, he's visiting the site of a recent genocide. And even with the head and the tongue, I still look at this flashback and I go, damn, this is heavy, just like your head. Also, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, the truly AAA game that fits right in your pocket thing, featuring millions of champion combinations, countless tactics, and the ability to raid your way. And the way I want to raid today is by talking to you about High Elves. Not exactly what I expected, other than the fact that they are incredibly arrogant with the whole, helping to form human civilization thing. I mean, I get it, thanks, but can we move on? Then again, they have had their schism with the Dark Elves, aka the psychopathic murder machines, so hey, I guess the High Elves are probably the best of a bad bunch. I just wish they weren't so snooty about it, And this month, Raid released a brand new faction, the Sylvan Watchers, with amazing new champions, Forest Elves, Ents, Druids, and Fays. Plus, there's a full lineup of events, along with a new season of Forge Pass, where you can get your hands on some of the most powerful gear the game has ever seen. Also, if you're an Amazon Prime member, then you can get your exclusive rewards in Raid right now. But there's more. New players use my link in the description or scan the QR code and get a free starter pack worth almost $30, a free champion Ina, and this cool in-game loot. You'll find your rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. So do that thing, but for now it's back to you. Me? Seeing young Dragon was incredibly unexpected, and the conversation between Dragon and Vegapunk absolutely captivated me. I was also really touched by the small memorial they made from a piece of the Tree of Knowledge. It was tragically sweet, like serving gummy bears at a funeral. And I know there's so much to get to here, but first up, young Professor Clover. Of all of the characters I never expected to receive any sort of backstory expansion on, he's definitely one of the ones, if not the one. But I love his younger form. He looks so adventurous and happy. In this moment sailing the world, he perfectly reflects both Luffy and Roger, very much embodying his own personal Joy Boy spirit. He also must have been an absolute beast back in the day. Sailing these seas is not easy. There are like powerful people and creatures and stuff. And it takes a certain level of strength to sail through the Grand Line, which assumedly Clover did because his mission was worldwide. So he pretty much Indiana Jonesed himself into becoming the world's most famous archaeologist. And I'd be incredibly curious to see more of his era, because Clover is so old that he would have been sailing long before the birth of infamous characters like Whitebeard and Roger, and I really do wonder what the world was like in the era prior to those dominant names. A lot of what happened here also recontextualizes how we see Ohara. In Robin's flashback, I always got the feeling of desperate futility with the scholars throwing all of the books into the water, like it was pure tragedy. But now I look back on that and go, you absolute legends. In your final moments, you have changed the fate of the entire world. Let's talk about what could be arguably the biggest reveal of the chapter, which is that Jaguar D Soul is alive. Because usually this is the sort of thing that would annoy me. Fake deaths are my most disliked aspect of One Piece. I despise them, and I think that Oda can often be very greedy and incredibly clunky when implementing them. But I can't help feel differently about Soul, and I think a lot of that has to do with Robin. Here I can't help but be happy because seeing the evolution of expressions on Robin's face was a roller coaster. It started out reopening an old wound and making Robin genuinely sad, and then those tears transformed into eyes lit up with a spark of hope. And finally, they became tears of joy when Robin realized that Soul was alive. It was so good. I don't think I've been more emotionally touched by a One Piece character moment since Robin's I Want to Live. And because it's Robin, Oda really has to nail this with masterful subtlety. Because there is precedence for flashback figures who are supposed to be dead being alive, specifically with Luffy and Sabo. However, Oda can't go all out here with a Luffy NL style expression. It just feels human, and I can't help but heavily empathize with her. Rather hilariously, this also wraps up a lesser known conflict, because Soul's death was something of a touchy topic on the One Piece wiki, specifically between two wiki editors, Justin and Joe Kiddo, who had an argument in the Soul discussion section where Joe said, "Oh, come on, Justin. Soul is dead, and that's the fact. So please stop trying to be full of yourself and leave Soul in the dead category, okay? Peace out, man." To which Justin replied, "You're talking to me about being full of himself, Joe? You're the one who said flat out that we should all just shut up and let you run the wiki and do whatever you like. I don't think you have much room to talk on this particular matter." In any case, let the record show that Justin was correct on this matter. Soul should not have been put in the dead section. But I think part of why this all hits me so strongly is because whenever any Slobby becomes relevant again, it just it sends a wave of nostalgia my way. It takes me back to reading One Piece as a teenager in high school, so that era will always probably have a much more powerful effect on me. It also makes the Robin versus Black Maria fight much more interesting in retrospect, specifically when Black Maria summoned the illusions of Soul, Olvia, and Clover, because in that moment, Robin had well and truly accepted that all three of them were gone. It was a great character moment, but it was also very narratively clever, because now that Soul is alive and Ohara is becoming extremely relevant, you can see that this wasn't just a one-off character moment that Oda included. He did this specifically to seed Ohara in the mind brains of the readers. Knowing that Egghead was up next, it was a very sneaky way of going, "Hey, remember these Ohara characters? They were pretty great, weren't they?" Oh no, I'm not bringing them up for any specific reason, but just between you and me, just to keep them in mind, okay? And as a result, one of the things I'm now most looking forward to in the future is the inevitable reunion of Robin and Soul, in much the same way that I'm eagerly anticipating Brook and Laboon. You know, I don't think I've ever actually noticed this until now, but it makes perfect sense that a lot of Robin's ultimate attacks are based on giant limbs, because as a child, Soul was the strongest person she knew, so of course she's going to go about replicating that strength in her own way. Soul also led a group of giants to retrieve the Ohara books, which is fun for two reasons. One, because he got giants from Elbaf and took the books back to Elbaf. Soul himself is not from Elbaf. He's from a completely different tribe of giants somewhere out there in the place that is the world. That's all we know. He even considered the customs of Elbaf to be barbaric, so it's just an intriguing note that he turned to them. And secondly, we actually know all of the giants that were seen retrieving the books. In that panel, we saw Harudin, Gerd, and Goldberg, all of whom are members of the new Giant Warrior Pirates, who are one of the 7 key factions of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. And Goldberg in particular also has this really fun living shield with a face and a big old tongue thing, very Vegapunk-esque. But with this, we are definitely going to Elbaf, right? This is 100% confirmed now, surely. Before, I do think it was a bit up in the air, as if Elbaf was a bit of an optional arc, maybe just somewhere that Usopp visits after the journey, but I really don't see any way around it now. This island has just become far too important. In fact, what we could be doing right now is even setting up an Elbaf saga, or Egghead Island could even end up being the first part of the Elbaf saga, because Robin's got to get to that island to read all of the books, and Usopp needs to go to Elbaf to complete his giant-focused arc, and the fact that some of our Grand Fleet members are island natives just makes everything too perfect. Then there's also the ongoing meta threads with Lola and Loki and Big Mom. Chuck a red poneglyph in there and it's a done deal. This flashback also did a lot to service the Revolutionary Army, because we can now pinpoint the exact moment moment where Dragon hit the accelerator on his drive to change the world. And in general, it's just really cool to know that he, Ivankov, and Kuma were the founding members. Although what's even better is that after that, there was this mind-melting panel of the crew, because this information piqued all of their interests in different ways. Nami was interested in Dragon. Usopp was like, Elbaf, I want to go to there. Then Frankie went, Kuma, my man, the ship guy. And Sanji was all like, Ivankov, right? So it was such a crazy panel because it was this crossover of 4 completely separate storylines. I'm not surprised that Sanji doesn't really know much about Ivankov's history, because even if Ivankov did feel like divulging such juicy information, Sanji almost certainly would not have wanted to listen. What surprises me a bit more is that Robin doesn't know any of this yet. Theoretically, Dragon knows that Saul and the Giant saved the books and took the books to Elbaf, and Robin of course spent 2 years within Dragon's army, so I guess my question is, why is any of this actually news to her? I feel like that's one of the first things you'd tell Robin if you were Dragon. Well, that and, hey, I'm your captain's daddy. Things are all becoming very clear though. Now that we know all of this, we've removed a lot of questions surrounding Kuma, specifically why and how he decided to protect the Sunny. He did it because of Dragon's son, and Vegapunk obliged because he is a longtime friend of Dragon. I mean, friend might be a bit of a strong word, but maybe solid colleague guy that he liked more than other guys. But this chapter pretty much solidifies Vegapunk as a good dude. The Shroud of Evil question marks is all but removed, with Vegapunk believing that there are a lot of great people within the world government, and that being a better mechanism for Vegapunk personally to have an impact on the world. Essentially, what we have with Vegapunk and Dragon are the 2 opposing philosophies of change. Dragon's path is change from the outside, meanwhile Vegapunk's path is change from within. I guess from within should be more like that instead of that, but I've done it now. Although I'm still curious about the Mads days with Queen and Judge, but I guess that's kind of looking like the science equivalent of the Rocks Pirates. You know, like how Whitebeard was a good-hearted guy man in amongst a crew of morally ambiguous bunglenuts. However, at the end of this chapter, Vegapunk's persona is definitely a lot different from what we see of him in the flashback. Modern Vegapunk seems a lot more dazed and aloof compared to his more composed and focused version of the past. It very much gives me the feeling of a cool retired grandfather just playing with the grandkids. Sort of like he lopped off his big brain, gave responsibility to the other 6 Vegapunks, and now the core Vegapunk is just enjoying his retirement, playing in the junkyard. One thing that goes a bit under the radar here is the impending conversation between Vegapunk and Bonnie. It was quite cute to hear Vegapunk doing the whole, oh, you've grown so much since you were not that big, and all of that, but we've got some serious business to settle here, which I imagine may lead us straight into the tragic tale of Bartholomew Kuma, as well as any number of other things, because that is the thing amongst things about Vegapunk. He is the man with almost all of the answers. He could shed light on Dragon, he could explain devil fruits, he could explain Kuma, he could even unveil what was written in those thousands of books on Ohara. What we could learn from the world's smartest man is limitless. This story could go in any direction with any number of revelations, and all of it sits on the tip of the tongue that is this tongue. It's very big, and I cannot wait to see what gets thrown at us next.